Alright, y'all. We doing our first reaction.
I don't know what the fuck. No, I'm playing. But yeah, though.
Yeah, y'all know what's going on. We're doing our first reaction. And we're watching this video. Cold Cases Solved with Twist. Never watched this shit or not.
Y'all know it be weird shit going on.
Fat ass Woody and his bitch ain't no talking.
Was affectionately known as Danny. From a young age, Danny was the apple of her mother's eye, and the bond between them was unbreakable. On September 21st, 1996, 15-year-old Danielle left her home in Belgrade, Montana, with plans to spend the day fishing at Cameron Bridge Fishing Access, a popular spot she often visited. It was supposed to be a peaceful, solitary escape, just another quiet day by the water. However, what began as a routine outing soon spiraled into a harrowing mystery when Danielle failed to return home. Later that day, searchers discovered her truck parked near the fishing access. The vehicle was left unlocked, with no immediate signs of struggle, but there was no trace of Danielle herself. Hours passed, and as daylight waned, the search intensified, driven by growing fears for her safety. Tragically, those fears were realized when Danielle's lifeless body was found several hours later, face down in shallow water, not far from where her truck was discovered. The evidence of assault was undeniable, and the manner of her demise was as horrific as it was heartbreaking. Her final moments had been spent in terror, as her attacker brutally forced her head down into the marshy ground. As investigators pieced together the tragic events, it became evident that Danielle had been suffocated, with her head held down until she choked to her end on the mud. Who was responsible for taking Danielle Houchin's life? For nearly 28 years,
Who y'all think is responsible? Drop down in the comments. I feel like it's a crazy nigga. Y'all know how it go. Niggas be crazy, man.
this question remained unanswered. Despite the case going cold, the sheriff's office refused to let it slip into oblivion. In 2019, they reopened the investigation, hopeful that advancements in forensic science might finally bring closure to this tragic chapter. The preserved evidence from Danielle's case was sent to a state-of-the-art forensics lab in California, where it was meticulously analyzed. The DNA was compared against the FBI's CODIS, but no matches were found. Though this was a discouraging outcome, investigators remained steadfast in their pursuit of justice. They turned to a new and promising tool: genetic genealogy. With a court order, they accessed the extensive DNA databases, hoping to find a match that CODIS could not provide. This bold move paid off when a DNA match was found, leading investigators to Paul Hutchinson, a 55-year-old man living in Dillon, Montana. In July
It's an old nigga that get no coochie, so of course he out here acting a fool, y'all.
2024, investigators approached Hutchinson at his home, confronting him with questions about Danielle's case. The interaction was tense, and Hutchinson's nervous and erratic behavior raised suspicions. His demeanor suggested he was hiding something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Just hours after the interview, on August 9th, 2024, Hutchinson took his own life, abruptly ending the possibility of a full confession. Despite his untimely demise, the case was not closed. Shortly thereafter, forensic analysts confirmed that the DNA evidence from Danielle's case was an undeniable match to Hutchinson. The long-awaited breakthrough had finally come, but it arrived with a mix of relief and sorrow. His family, unaware of his past, was left devastated by the revelation. Hutchinson was married and worked for the Bureau of Land Management for 22 years. He had 2 kids, a daughter around the age of 20 and a younger son. He was a graduate student at Montana State and had only been in the area a short period at the time he took Danny's life. While the confirmation of his guilt brought a sense of resolution to Danielle's family, it also underscored the profound impact of a crime that had gone unsolved for so many years. Danny's younger sister, Stephanie Mollett, said, "Even though this man will not face a jury of his peers, I have no doubt he was the one who forcefully and violently assaulted my sister. When the time came to face up and account for his violence, he instead chose to end his life. He knew of his guilt and could not face my family or his family and the pain he caused. After nearly 28 years without answers, without justice, we celebrate today." Stephanie says 28 years is far too long, and she had to fight far too hard to find justice for her 15-year-old sister. She also said, "Montanans, Danielle's story should anger you, should make you think about your mothers, your sisters, your wives, and your daughters. Should make you think about everything you would do to protect and honor the women you love." The wife of Paul Hutchinson, Christy, has issued the following statement: "We are absolutely heartbroken to learn this news, and our hearts go out to the Hutchins family. It is good to know that they will at last be able to find the closure that they deserve. Our own family was already reeling from dealing with Paul ending his own life. In 24 years of marriage, there was never any hint that something like this could be lurking in the background. Paul was an exceptional husband and father. This latest news makes our grieving so much more complicated. We would appreciate being given the space to process and come to terms with this development as we mourn. The investigation into Danny's case is closed. However, law enforcement is still looking into Paul Hutchinson's life and possible connections to other cold cases." Melissa Patton was born on September 9th, 1977, to Carl and Norma Patton. Growing up just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, she shared a close bond with her older sister, Tina. Melissa's personality was infectious. She was often described by her loved ones as bubbly, kind, and trusting. After high school, she married her longtime boyfriend, Christopher Wolfenbarger, and the couple relocated to a different part of Atlanta. Their union was blessed with 2 children, a son named Joey and a daughter named Chrissy. Melissa thrived as a devoted wife and mother, embracing her role with joy and dedication. The last known contact Melissa had with her parents occurred on Thanksgiving Day in 1998. During a phone call from Christopher's grandparents' home, she discussed plans for Christmas, leaving her family with the impression that everything was normal. However, when Melissa failed to appear for the holiday and later missed her mother's birthday in February 1999, her parents' worry turned into alarm. Norma decided to take matters into her own hands and traveled to Melissa's home, only to be met with disturbing news from the neighbors. The Wolfenbargers had mysteriously moved away shortly after Christmas, leaving no trace of their whereabouts. Christopher, Melissa's husband, never filed a missing person report for her, nor did he inform her family of her sudden absence. His silence was deafening, especially considering his documented history of domestic violence against Melissa. The fact that he did not reach out to her family further fueled their fears and suspicions. For Norma, Christopher's actions, or lack thereof,
She was domestic violence in?
No, she was getting beat.
raised chilling questions about what had really happened to her daughter. On April 29, 1999, a gruesome discovery was made in a wooded area along Avon Avenue near Hartford Avenue. Inside a garbage bag, discarded in a dumpster, was the severed and bleached head of a woman. Just over a month later, on June 3rd, more dismembered remains belonging to the same woman were found. These remains, carefully packed in black trash bags and discarded in another dumpster, were missing the torso. Investigators noted that the dismemberment appeared to have been done with a saw, suggesting a methodical and brutal disposal of the body. The locations where the remains were found raised particular interest among investigators. They were alarmingly close to a glass company where Christopher Wolfenbarger, Melissa's husband, had been employed in the late 1990s. This connection was more than a coincidence. Christopher had been dismissed from this company after being suspected of stealing a reciprocal saw. a tool that could easily have been used in the dismemberment of the body. The proximity of the dump sites to his former workplace and his history of theft added a chilling layer to the investigation. As authorities dug deeper, the pieces began to fit together in a disturbing way. The careful dismemberment and the bleaching of the head pointed to a perpetrator who had both the tools and the knowledge to carry out such a heinous act. While the identification of the remains had not yet been confirmed, the proximity to Christopher's past workplace and the nature of the crime created a dark cloud of suspicion over him. In 2003, a significant breakthrough emerged in the haunting case of Melissa Patton's disappearance, when authorities successfully identified the dismembered remains as hers through advanced DNA testing. This pivotal identification hinged on a DNA sample from her father, Carl Patton, who had recently been arrested for a string of unrelated crimes. The discovery not only provided a grim closure to Melissa's family, but also unveiled a sinister facet of Carl's past that had long remained hidden. Between 1973 and 1977, Carl was responsible for the slayings of 5 individuals across Georgia, 3 of which were part of the infamous Flint River slayings. These cases had baffled law enforcement for years, remaining unsolved mysteries until the DNA evidence linked Carl to them. As the investigation deepened, Carl pleaded guilty to 4 of these cases in March 2003, and the 5th in May of the same year. His confessions led to a life sentence without the possibility of parole, sealing his fate behind bars and bringing some measure of justice for his victims. Initially, the revelation of Carl's brutal past led investigators to suspect him in the disappearance and slaying of his own daughter, Melissa. However, further scrutiny and evidence established that Carl had been incarcerated well before Melissa vanished, effectively eliminating him as a suspect in her case. This development was both a relief and a new source of anguish for the Patton family, as it meant that the true perpetrator remained at large. With Carl cleared of any involvement, the
He was killing bitches, right, and chopping them up, 5 of them. Then his daughter died the same way. That's crazy. His daughter got chopped up and killed.
The dad was doing that
to other bitches,
and then
his daughter ended up dying by getting chopped up
by her nigga.
I don't know. Yeah, by her.
What the hell?
We don't know who did it yet. We about to find out.
Focus of the investigation shifted back to Christopher Wolfenbarger, Melissa's estranged husband. Despite the red flags, law enforcement struggled to gather the concrete evidence necessary to press charges against him, leaving Christopher as the sole suspect without formal accusations. In 2024, the police, determined to bring closure to the cold case, re-examined the evidence with fresh eyes and new forensic techniques. These developments finally pointed decisively towards Christopher Wolfenbarger, Melissa's estranged husband, as the prime suspect in her slaying. On a hot summer day in August, law enforcement moved swiftly to apprehend Christopher at his home in Griffin, Georgia. The arrest itself was as bizarre as it was telling. Christopher was found desperately trying to evade capture by hiding behind a dryer in his residence. This attempt to conceal himself only reinforced the suspicion that he had something to hide. The officers wasted no time in taking him into custody, marking a pivotal moment in the long and painful journey toward justice for Melissa. On August 6, 2024, Christopher was formally charged with taking the life of Melissa. At the press conference, Detective Shepard, who took over the case several years ago, said Christopher had been a person of interest from the beginning, and that probable cause is how they were able to finally make the arrest. When asked what specifically linked Christopher to the slaying, he said, "I want to protect the integrity of the case going forward, so I cannot disclose certain evidence, but we look at everything when it comes to a cold case." For her family, the arrest brought a bittersweet sense of vindication. The man they had long suspected was finally being held accountable, but it also meant revisiting the trauma of their loss. Norma Patton, Melissa's mother, said, We have finally made
He on
it.
the second one.
He is in custody, and now we just need to get over the last hurdle and get him
He in
convicted.
custody, y'all.
You do
They
not
got
know
his
what the
ass.
final straw was that caused him to do what he did to her. He is the only one who has the real answers.
Damn.
She said her last words to her daughter was, "I love you." In 1987, a 19-year-old woman became pregnant, a momentous event that should have been marked by joy, but the circumstances surrounding it were anything but clear. Details about her life during this time remain obscure, leaving many questions unanswered. Was the pregnancy a result of a relationship, or were there more complex factors at play? The lack of information has only added to the sense of mystery and tragedy that would. The Riverside County Coroner's Office conducted a thorough examination and quickly ruled that the newborn's life was taken. Despite the best efforts of the Riverside Police Department's detectives, the investigation hit a wall. They followed every lead, interviewed potential witnesses, and scoured for evidence. But the identity of the baby's mother or anyone involved remained elusive. As the years passed, the case grew cold. The Riverside Police Department's cold case unit made a pivotal decision in 2020. One that would eventually lead to justice for a crime that had been unsolved for over 3 decades. Determined to resolve the case of the unidentified baby girl found in 1987, detectives joined forces with the Riverside County Regional Cold Case Team and the non-profit organization Season of Justice. This collaboration was driven by the hope that new forensic technologies, especially advanced DNA analysis, could finally identify the mother of the deceased infant. Their dedication paid off when the DNA evidence eventually led them to a name, Melissa Jean Allen Avila. After years of uncertainty, the mother of the baby was finally identified, but the case was far from over. Authorities needed to locate Avila, who had since moved across the country. On August 7, 2024, the long search came to an end when Avila, now a 55-year-old resident of Shelby, North Carolina, was apprehended. Her arrest was the result of coordinated efforts between the U.S. Marshals Pacific Southwest Regional Fugitive Task Force and the U.S. Marshals Carolinas Regional Fugitive Task Force. Following her arrest, Avila was extradited back to Riverside County, California, the place where the tragic events of 1987 had unfolded. She now faced charges for taking the life of her newborn baby girl. Avila, now facing the weight of long-delayed justice, was booked into the Larry D. Smith Correctional Facility. A stark contrast to the years of freedom she had lived, despite the dark shadow of her past. With bail set at $1.1 million, the severity of the charges against her was unmistakably clear. The court will soon hear the evidence that ties Avila to the slaying of her newborn daughter, with DNA analysis playing a pivotal role in the prosecution's case. Wayne Pratt, a 24-year-old man, worked as a gas station operator at the Enco gas station located along U.S. Highway 41 in Winnebago, Wisconsin, about 60 miles southwest of Green Bay. Known for his kind-hearted nature, Wayne was deeply loved by those around him, especially by his wife, Marie Pratt, to whom he was a devoted and caring husband. The night of June 12, 1963, would mark a tragic and unforeseen twist in his life. On that fateful evening, the ordinary rhythm of Wayne's existence was shattered, setting off a chain of events that would leave his family and community in shock. What began as just another day at the gas station quickly turned into a night filled with fear and uncertainty, changing the course of Wayne's life forever. As the evening progressed, the quiet town of Winnebago was unaware that something terrible was about to unfold at the Enco station. That evening, Wayne Pratt had been at home, relaxing and watching TV. It was an ordinary night until around 8:40 p.m., when the sound of a car pulling up to the gas station interrupted his evening. Always diligent and ready to help, Wayne stepped outside and walked toward the station, assuming that the driver needed gas or assistance. He had no reason to suspect that this encounter would be anything other than routine. As time passed and Wayne did not return home, his wife, Marie, grew increasingly anxious. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours, and her concern deepened. Unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, Marie decided to head to the gas station herself, hoping to find Wayne busy with a late customer. However, nothing could have prepared her for the tragedy. When authorities arrived, Marie recounted the harrowing details of how she had found her husband. As the investigation into Wayne Pratt's slaying began, the full extent of the brutality he suffered became chillingly clear. Wayne had been stabbed 53 times, a horrifying act of violence that shocked even the most seasoned investigators. The sheer number of wounds indicated a level of rage and personal animosity that made the crime all the more perplexing. Yet, despite the gruesome nature of the attack, there was a glimmer of hope in the form of evidence left behind. Blood that did not belong to Wayne. This discovery suggested that Wayne's assailant had also been injured during the violent struggle. The presence of the attacker's blood at the scene provided investigators with a crucial lead, hinting that the person responsible had left behind a trace of their identity. However, despite this promising clue, the investigation quickly encountered significant challenges. No further details about how the events unfolded that night could be uncovered, leaving many questions unanswered. As the months turned into years, the trail grew colder. Investigators exhausted every lead, but the case remained frustratingly stagnant. With no arrests made and no new evidence coming to light, Wayne Pratt's case began to slip from the forefront of public attention. The case, once a priority, slowly transitioned into a cold case, as the initial burst of investigative activity failed to yield any significant breakthroughs. By the time the late 1960s arrived, the investigation had stalled almost entirely. With limited resources and no new leads, law enforcement had little choice but to scale back their efforts. In 2011, nearly 5 decades after Wayne's life was brutally taken, the case was reopened as investigators sought to leverage advancements in forensic science to find new leads. With DNA technology now more sophisticated, the hope was that re-examining the evidence might finally reveal the identity of Wayne's perpetrator. Investigators focused on the blanket found covering Wayne's body, knowing that any genetic material left behind could provide the breakthrough they needed. By 2015, their efforts seemed to be paying off. Sorensen Forensics, a leading forensic testing company, identified DNA mixtures on the blanket, a promising development that brought new life to the investigation. However, the mixed nature of the DNA samples complicated matters, preventing authorities from entering the information into national databases to search for a match. The investigation stalled once again, as the inability to isolate a clear profile left investigators at a frustrating standstill. 3 years later, however, the case took a significant turn. In 2018, a warrant was issued for the arrest of William Dockstader, an 82-year-old man from Bowler, Wisconsin. Dockstader had been on the radar of investigators since 1963, when he was initially identified as a suspect in the days following Wayne's demise. Tips about his potential involvement resurfaced in 1968 and again in 2022, keeping him in the periphery of the investigation for decades. But it was not until 2023 that new DNA technology provided the evidence needed to conclusively link Dockstader to the crime. In 2023, Sorensen Forensics re-examined the DNA evidence using the latest technology, while cybergenetics employed true allele data analysis to sift through the complex DNA mixtures. The analysis...
Alright, y'all. So, it's our first video. Reaction. We're gonna be doing more shit. Other shit.
My eyes look glossy as shit.
Yeah, we geeked, yeah. Yo, hopefully y'all blazed y'all witties. You got anything to say?
Nah, Just tap in.
Just tap in. Just tap in. Just tap in. Alright, y'all. We back with another one.
Not, not the cameras.